И наш следующий гость – это Анн-Мари Верхувэ. Анн-Мари известный такой коммуникатор, она по всему миру соединяет передовые сообщества, передовые инициативы друг с другом. Она основательница вместе с другими коллегами Гаагского центра инноваций и развития, собственно, человеческих систем, да, развития там, человечества. Вот, Ann-Marie, if you are here, also let me see your screen.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, beautiful.
I'm here all the time.
Oh. We had I understand that you heard our discussion with Marilyn, yes. And yes. The fact that she mentioned, you remember this love in the center of all the other four elements is what we spoke about last couple of minutes. And I introduced who you are and what you're doing, that you are a global connector, among other things. And it's interesting, before coming to this session, in a different setting, one of our colleagues asked, what is heart intelligence? And I said, well, you should come, because today Ann-Marie will talk, and she's not only talking about heart intelligence, but she has a mission together with her colleagues of building heart-based civilization. So could you share with us, what does it mean and how do we work with it? How do we make it actual in our everyday life?
Well, thank you for that invitation, and for this invitation, and for all of you being here. That already opens up my heart and gives me hope and perspective. And I think that's one of the things that our heart intelligence can do. It can really open up ourselves to have this deep connection with each other and the world around us, and ourselves, of course, like Marilyn just shared. And what if we are here to serve life and beauty on earth and to bring that love forth? What if that is actually what our purpose as humanity is? And to interweave and to bring things together with all life forms that are here. I tend to believe that. That gives me a perspective, and it helps me to open up and to keep going with courage and a sense of meaning that is helpful in to see that in every little connection that we make. And in the U process of Otto Scharmer, he speaks about listening and these levels of listening that we do with our minds, but we can also listen with our hearts, and we can listen with our will, as he calls it. And I could say, if you look at your body, it would be in your guts or in your womb or in that deep sense within your stomach, somewhere there in that area. And using that as part of your compass to see what it is that you're doing, designing, and how you're being is one of the ways that you can work with the different intelligences in our bodies, which are also then, of course, reflected in the outside world, and which the compass, or the GPS, as we call with Integral City, also brings into presence, to see that there are different ways that we make meaning of the world around us. And what we're looking for is, if we open our hearts and light up our hearts in kindness, then we see different things, and we might be designing the ways we interact together in a different way, which the four deeps and the deeps that Marilyn was mentioning, of course, also help us to do, and which, how I have spoken with Marina, but also with you, Lev, and looking at the Happy City Index, is exactly what we're looking for. And it's actually what I've learned from scientists like Jude Caravan and Irvin Laszlo, is that we can, if we really sense into this, then we can trust that life is fractal, that what is in the outside mirrored also in the inside and the other way around, like Marilyn was also mentioning, and that how we are ourselves as humans structured and how we are showing up, we can also translate that somehow to the ways we connect in our social contexts, in our cultural ways of coming together. And from that perspective, then look at what systems and structures can support us to be in that space. And some parts can be complicated, but other parts can be actually very easy. Like, for example, to drop into your heart just by using your breath and being aware of your breath, which is our life force. Without our breath, we don't live. We're not here. And just dropping into that and going there already brings you in a different space in your mind. We know that from research, but you can also feel it in your body. So it can sound sometimes like very complex, but it is also actually a choice, and it can be easy. And we can make that choice in a split second. And that's the twist that we're looking for.
It's both beautiful and also very, as you say, it's both complex and maybe simple in a way that you can apply to your life in a matter of a second. And moving from a context of a city to a context of an organization, we all know that in your teams, right, whether it's a business organization or non-for-profit organization, you build a team when you create a synchronicity between different team members. And synchronicity is always created when people both get into the same mindset, but also on a bodily level. Yes. When we walk together, or as you said, we breathe together, right? Or we do some things together, there is some sense of commonality and some group identity which is being formed with words or without words. And thinking about our topic of today, the happy cities, and I hear some dogs, barking to support this thesis. The happy cities are created when people feel connected to other people, right? When their hearts or their soul opens up, right? And they can establish connections with people around them in an organization, in a family, or in the city as a whole. And one of the things which creates this connection, as you mentioned, is kindness. So I always say that living cities are wise cities, and Case will talk about it, I guess, later. Living cities are definitely happy cities, but also living cities are kind cities. And when we have this kindness in ourselves, we can spread it around, whether we're, a city governor, a mayor, right, a business person, a clerk, or a city activist. If we solve our issues with kindness in our heart, immediately everything illuminates in a different way. So you live in the Netherlands, and Netherlands, along with other couple of Scandinavian countries, are really, in a way, an example of how social life is organized. There is a high level of prosperity, I think high level of social harmony overall. And why do you think it happens this way in those countries? So let's talk about, the Netherlands in particular. What are the historical reasons, and what we in Russia can learn from Dutch, for example, city and urban experience?
Thank you for that, and for noticing. And of course, we have our complexities as well. Let's be clear about that. But I think part of our heritage has to do with our relationship with water. We live for a big part of our country is below sea level. We have created our country ourselves in collaboration, of course, with water, with the elements, and that endeavor, that kind of like entrepreneurial spirit that came and arose in those ancient times, has made collaboration an essence, a life force, I would say. Because, if I want to get dry feet and I make a dike and I have a pump, or I do something with buckets, or whatever way you try to get the water out, if I do it in my part, but you don't take care of your part and your dike breaks, I will drown too. So it only can be developed through collaboration. So seeing these things where collaboration is kind of like a need, a necessity, or a source of joy really helps in our cities, and creating these spaces where that can happen. Like, for example, what we're seeing a lot happening around community gardening, or even if you look at these places where you're seeing that they're having sports machines where you could do things together, is already creating some opportunities to come together. But in the sense of, for the Netherlands, it is crucial. So we have been developing from the very start, actually, I would say, ways to overcome our differences in order to come together around water. And water is, of course, you could see that very pragmatic and as a systems and structures and how we build that, which are quite democratic, which are ancient democratic systems. Mm-hmm. That, like in Utrecht, in the province where I live, next year that will be have existed, that whole structure, that water management, for 950 years. And in that, all stakeholders have something to say, because a farmer needs the water to be at a different level than the city planner, than the tourist industry. So there are always, with regards to water, many stakeholders that are involved to decide and come together to say, okay, let's do it this way or that way. And how do we interpret the weather, of course, conditions, and what's happening with the rivers coming into a country, because of course the rivers come from all different parts from Europe. So in that sense, it's also kind of like, you know, it has brought forth a lot of water knowledge. And there's also something else that is interesting around water, because of course we are, for our bodies, if I look at that fractal nature that I was speaking of before, water, we are water. There is water so much around us. So connecting to water in a way that there is this love-hate relationship. We also hold that within ourselves, within our societies. But in the end, if we don't really relate to it, and if we don't come in some kind of collaboration, then we know we will not survive. And that is something that we can also take into for ourselves and for our communities and for our small places like that. So there's also kind of like a spiritual connection that you can make. It's not needed, but you can do it.
It's interesting. I'm a simple person, so I can only grab as much. And so far, I got two words from our discussion. One is kindness. The second one is collaboration.
Yes.
And if we're thinking about this topic of happiness in the cities, what would be the third word you would like to add? You could think about it for a while. So we have kindness, we have collaboration. What else is critical for people in the cities to be more sort of happier society as a whole? I'm kind of like gratitude and hope. Mm-hmm. And they inform each other, because if I connect to the notion of gratitude, it puts myself in a different perspective, and it helps me feel part of an interconnected and interdependent whole. And sensing and seeing that larger perspective gives hope too, because we're not on our own. It's so interesting when I listen to you, and I, in my inner vision, I have our sort of different cities and how the life is structured. I had an insight that in order to develop this culture of gratitude and hope, we need to work with young people, because it's very difficult to change adults. We all grew up in a, let's say, in a certain environment, and there were good, beautiful things about it, some difficult things, but also we have a legacy of hundreds of years of wars and, all the social upheavals and different type of complex situations. And so this collective psyche, it holds a lot of stress. And in order for us to move forward, I think it's not only changing ourselves, like me or Maria or Marina or Valeria or any one of us today and who will watch this in a video recording, but really it's working with the younger generations because they're in a more formative stages of life. And connecting to the topic of cities, the cities should, and I would say even must, take responsibility. Cities as a collectives of human, consciousness and collective action, take responsibility for changing the way schools are organized today. So we not only give, art and mathematics and literature and other things, but we also create conditions for young people to learn or unlock kindness and hope and gratitude as the key fundamental things which will help them to collaborate, yes, to create economic progress and do all the other visible things. But without those inner beautiful foundation, there will be none of those external things after all. So
yes, so loving. If you look at, for example, the methodology of Loving Classroom, it is really acknowledging that although we all have the heart and we have that capacity, our systems have not enhanced and opened us up. They have actually helped us to block part of the love. So we need to, it seems like we need to teach how to love. Well, we don't really, but that's what we need to change in the schools. So if you bring that in, then you will not only be offering the children that perspective, but what we've noticed and what we've got back from the teachers, but also the parents within the schools, they also kind of wake up and say, oh yes, that's how you come up with gratitude. That's what kindness means. That's how you can put compassion into practice. That is what it means when you really speak about care and respect. And it starts, of course, with what you said and what we spoke about, the connections and the container, the context and the container to feel safe enough to do that and to create those kind of conditions. And that, again, of course, also in the design and in the programming and in the development of cities, we can, the way we design it can help us to have those moments as well. And I would want to also mention one other thing that I think is so important, because I'm sorry about my little dog barking and giving us a kind of like a yes to what we were speaking about. But connecting to nature is a very easy way, actually, to open up our hearts as well. Mm-hmm. So whenever there is that pain or that fear, or whenever there is that kind of like loss of hope, or if you even just touch a tree, if you even just be noticing the plant in your house, that already helps you to shift. And if you combine it with breath, it's even easier. If you do some breathing practice, and that is not only because I might love nature. It's also scientifically being proven again and again that if we do that, that already helps us to come in a different place within ourselves that opens up our hearts and minds to be able to come more into a deeper connection.
It's very beautiful. I recall there is a book by some Japanese author about forest walks, and there is a special tradition in Japan to walk in the forest because you observe the diversity, the extreme diversity of the flora and fauna in the forest, and somehow it reflects into your neural connections and your whole sort of body energy system. And but now to finalize our sort of brief discussions and thinking about everybody as we will move into our daily life, what are the two sort of actionable, as they say, items? What can we do after this little forum in our daily life to implement everything you and I have just discussed in the last 20 minutes. So what are your 2 advices for us to implement in our daily life?
First of all, I would say, well, take a deep breath and then sense what makes your heart sing. And it is perfectly okay to do that. We are being taught that we have to do all these other things. But following our hearts, what really makes us kind of get this energy? What if life is easy? What if it is like that is what you're to do? But take that deep breath first, because it's from that space that you want to feel whether your heart is singing, and it's not from the ego that is making your heart sing. So it's in that sense going there. And yeah, just look around you. Do you have nature within your context? A little plant or a flower or whatever, and just try it out. Just try how it works and practice and notice and be aware. And then we can scale that up into how is that in the social context? How is that in your cities? How does that then work? And how can you bring it in with very simple little things, but also larger context circles?
Ann-Marie, thank you so much. We've been talking about things which are not very usual for every one of us to think about on a daily basis, but they're really important. And the more we integrate those perspectives in our actions and our work, right, as city managers, for example, or business people, the more I think we'll be able to create this happy city atmosphere and happy city design. And as I mentioned in our discussion, a heart-based social architecture that will create conditions for more happy society. Thank you very much again.
Thank you for the invitation.
Марина, я передаю тебе опять, наверное, для такого круга рефлексии.
Сначала по-английски. Thank you, Ann-Marie, so much for your precious beauty and so deep wisdom. And thank you so much. Сложно говорить, друзья, потому что мы много сегодня уже обсудили практических моментов, но Анн-Мари, пожалуй, основной, наверное, для меня лично учитель вот этой связанности и мудрости, которая есть в мире. Анн-Мари, вот, наверное, начать важно с простого объяснения. Лев спросил, почему скандинавские страны и Нидерланды, которые представляет Анн-Мари, являются одними из самых счастливых по многим показателям, да, и таких активно развивающихся территорий. И мне кажется, очень важный подход, который на самом деле вообще любой регион России может тоже принять на вооружение. Анн-Мари сказала, что они все связаны с водой. Причем они живут на воде, и многие сотни лет их предки, собственно, учились взаимодействовать и сотрудничать с водой, чтобы выстраивать свои города. И они очень сильно зависят в связи с этим от чистоты воды, от связи с водой, от заботы о воде. И на эти водные ресурсы, естественно, и сети-менеджеры, и фермеры, и простые жители смотрят очень по-разному, но для того, чтобы каждый мог пользоваться возможностями и ресурсами чистой воды, им необходимо договариваться. И вот это вот умение взаимодействовать и договариваться в том регионе, в котором живет Анн-Мари, ему уже там около 950 лет, когда люди собираются вместе, обсуждая, каким образом этими водными ресурсами управлять. И это, конечно, колоссальное достижение с точки зрения социальных технологий. И важный момент вот этого фрактального подобия, Анн-Мари сказала о том, что мы ведь все состоим из воды. Мы на 80%, если я не ошибаюсь, да, состоим из воды, и в этом контексте мы и есть вода. И вот эта связанность, она на самом деле намного ближе и намного глубже, нежели просто совместное пользование водными ресурсами. И если мы говорим о вот этом сердечном интеллекте, да, или голосе сердца, разуме сердца, то здесь очень важно понять, что мы действительно являемся частью природы, и что, если мы не просто какой-то вид, который должен, я уже об этом говорила, да, там, отвоевывать свое право там, на существование, а вдруг цель вообще жизни человечества заключается в том, чтобы объединять все другие виды, заботиться о них и создавать новое, лучшее состояние для окружающей среды, для мира, для тех городов, в которых мы живем, для тех экорегионов, в которых мы существуем. И в этом контексте вот эта любовь, да, пожалуй, это, наверное, и здесь я абсолютно соглашусь, я тоже об этом все время мечтаю и говорю, что любви на самом деле нам нужно учиться. Причем надо учить молодежи эту любви, потому что любовь в нашем, ну, таком обывательском понимании, это что-то между мужчиной и женщиной, это любовь к детям, ну, возможно, любовь к родине, а любовь как чувство соединенности, связанности, вот этой глубинной заботы и соединенности со всем, что нас окружает, как часть единого целого. Это, казалось бы, какое-то такое очень сложное философское понятие, но на самом деле вот, Анн-Мари дала очень простой инструмент и эксперимент, когда мы можем просто глубоко подышать, просто прикоснуться к дереву, просто насладиться той природой, которая есть хотя бы там цветочком на окошке, которая у вас растет. Остановиться, глубоко подышать и подумать, что на самом деле заставляет наше сердце петь. И из этого состояния принимать решения о городском управлении, о зарабатывании денег, развитии бизнеса, о взаимодействии со своими близкими дома и с обществом, со своими сотрудниками. Но только сначала действительно нужно очень глубоко подышать, потому что именно эта соединенность, она дает нам возможность соединиться с нашим вот этим истинным внутренним центром, прекратить слушать голос разума и эго, который нам твердит, куда нам бежать, что делать, куда скакать, да, и чего достигать, а соединиться вот с этой внутренним нашим источником любви, который априори в нас всех встроен. И мне кажется, что вот такие вот глобальные уроки глобальной любви, такой вот, любви соединенности со своей подлинной природой человека и природой, которая окружает нас как людей, это действительно может стать очень мощным шагом в новом понимании, вот прям переключении к тому, как мы относимся к себе, к своим близким, далеким, незнакомым, городам и, наверное, вообще к смыслу своей жизни на планете, а что делает человека счастливым. Понимание того, зачем он здесь живет. Ну вот как-то так, очень сбивчиво, но меня переполняют чувства. Спасибо огромное. Thank you, Ann-Marie, for your deep conversation with Lev.
Спасибо. Коллеги, еще две минутки, если кто-то хочет добавить.
Я буду очень краткой. Кажется, что мы говорим о очень высоких, больших, глобальных философских вещах, но на самом деле буквально 2 месяца, ну, 1,5 даже месяца назад мы ставили микроэксперимент. Анн-Мари упомянула Отто Шармера, да, вот теории Ю, уровни слушания, на которых очень много на самом деле сейчас и выстраивается, и Отто Шармер не первый, кто об этом говорит. Так вот, мы пошли в микроэксперимент, у нас работала команда людей, группа, которая пошла в эти инструменты, она попробовала, нам удалось создать ту атмосферу безопасности и принятия, когда у людей вдруг начинались открываться вторые дыхания, они понимали, что у них огромное количество ресурсов и сил, поэтому не думайте, что это какие-то заоблачные философские дали, все очень, очень прагматично, приземленно и работает. Возвращаю.
Потрясающе. Валерия.
Я буквально на 2 слова, поскольку у нас впереди всего 20 минут и хочется услышать кейса. Действительно, жить в единении с тем местом, где ты находишься, это большое искусство. И ему нужно действительно учиться, и для этого нужны остановки. И вы не поверите, сейчас, когда Анн-Мари говорила про растения, знаете, что я сделала, когда я выключила экран? Я пошла смотреть на свои перцы, которые растут у меня на окне. И что я обнаружила? Что у меня сегодня, пока мы с вами общаемся, родился новый маленький перец на окне. И поэтому привет вам от моих чудесных растений, которые тоже подпитываются нашим душевным теплом. Спасибо огромное за это единение, которое я учусь в себе выращивать и сохранять. И сегодня я чувствую действительно вот это удивительное единение простором со всю планету. Спасибо большое.